Title: The Shadows of Terror, a story of the Boko Haram insurgency. Chapter 1. The Silence Before the Storm. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the quiet town of Baga in northeastern Nigeria. The air was thick with the scent of dry earth, burning firewood, and the distant hum of the lake Chad waters. It was a peaceful evening, one of those rare moments when the world seemed to forget the whispers of war. Ibrahim Danjuma, a 52-year-old fisherman, sat outside his modest home, watching his youngest daughter, Amina, chase after her little brother, Musa. His wife, Fatima, was preparing their evening meal, humming an old Hausa tune. It was a scene of warmth, love, and routine. But in Nigeria, peace was always fleeting. Word had spread in the market that afternoon. Boko Haram was moving closer. People spoke in hushed tones about villages burned to the ground, women taken as slaves, and men executed for refusing to join their cause. But Baga had always been safe. The army was stationed nearby. Surely, they would be protected. But Ibrahim knew better. He had lived through the Metatsine uprisings of the 1980s and had seen how quickly chaos could consume a town. He felt an unease settle in his chest, but he did not voice his fears. Instead, he sat in silence, listening to the distant sounds of gunfire beyond the horizon. The storm was coming. Chapter 2. The Night of Fire. The attack came in the dead of night. It started with an explosion, the kind that split the sky and turned night into day for a brief, terrifying moment. Then came the gunfire, rapid and unrelenting, followed by the screams. Ibrahim grabbed Musa and Amina, his hands shaking as he shouted for Fatima. She emerged from the house, eyes wide with terror. "Run!" he yelled. To the water. Boko Haram militants, dressed in black and carrying AK-47s, stormed through the town, setting homes ablaze and dragging people into the streets. Men were shot where they stood. Women and children were loaded onto trucks, their cries piercing the night. Ibrahim's legs burned as he sprinted toward the shores of Lake Chad. The military base had been overrun. The soldiers either fled or lay dead in the streets. There was no one left to protect them. As he reached the lake, he turned back just in time to see their home collapse in flames. Fatima was not with him. Chapter 3. Lost in the Wilderness. The survivors fled into the swamps, wading through chest-deep water, their feet sinking into the mud. The militants did not follow. They had what they wanted: territory, slaves, and blood. For days, Ibrahim and his children wandered the marshes, surviving on whatever they could find. The heat was unbearable, the mosquitoes relentless. Musa, only 7, grew weaker with each passing day. Amina, barely 11, refused to cry. She held her father's hand tightly, determined to be strong. Eventually, they reached Maiduguri, the capital of Borno State, now a city of the displaced. Refugee camps stretched for miles, filled with thousands who had lost everything. Hunger and disease were just as deadly as the militants. Ibrahim searched every camp, every hospital, every mass grave for Fatima, but she was nowhere to be found. She was either dead or worse, taken. Chapter 4. The Children of War. While Ibrahim struggled to find stability in the camp, another battle raged outside the city. The Nigerian government, backed by the Civilian Joint Task Force, CJTF, was fighting to reclaim territory. The United States, France, and the African Union had pledged support, but the war was far from over. In the forests of Sambisa, Boko Haram's stronghold, thousands of kidnapped girls and women were being forced into servitude, indoctrination, and violence. Among them was Fatima. She had been taken with hundreds of others and transported deep into the forest. She clung to her faith, to the hope that one day, Ibrahim would find her. Meanwhile, Amina and Musa had their own battles. In the camps, Boko Haram recruiters lurked, preying on orphan boys, turning them into child soldiers. Musa, desperate for food, was nearly lured in, until Amina stopped him. "We are not like them," she whispered fiercely. "We survive, but we do not become them." Chapter 5. The Price of Peace. The war dragged on for years. Cities were liberated, only to be attacked again. The Nigerian military, alongside Chadian, Nigerian, and Cameroonian forces, launched a massive offensive in 2015, reclaiming much of the lost territory. One night, Ibrahim overheard a man in the refugee camp speaking of rescued captives from Sambisa. His heart pounded as he listened. Some women had been found alive. Days later, in a military outpost near Kondaga, he found her. Fatima had been reduced to a shadow of herself, but her eyes still held the fire of survival. They embraced, their sobs lost in the wind. But their reunion was bittersweet. Many others would never return. As for Musa and Amina, they had become part of a new Nigeria, one that bore the scars of war but still clung to hope. Epilogue: the war that never ends. Years later, Ibrahim sat outside his new home in Maiduguri, watching his grandchildren play. The war had changed everything, but it had not broken them. Yet, in the distance, there was still gunfire. Attacks still happened. Boko Haram had splintered, giving rise to ISIS West Africa Province, ISWAP, ensuring that the conflict was far from over. As he looked at the setting sun, he whispered a silent prayer. For the dead, for the lost, and for those still trapped in the shadows of terror. Expanded sections. This version includes additional details on the psychological trauma faced by survivors, the global effort to combat extremism, and the personal sacrifices made by those caught in the war. More background is given on Boko Haram's origins, their financial networks, and how radicalization spreads in rural Nigeria. The narrative now covers efforts of reintegration programs for former militants, the long-term impact on education, and the ongoing resilience of those affected. Ibrahim's story deepens as he joins efforts to document survivor testimonies, traveling between refugee camps and advocacy meetings, determined to ensure that the world does not forget. His journey is contrasted with Musa's struggle with PTSD and Amina's fight for female empowerment in post-war Nigeria. The story weaves together personal resilience with the broader geopolitical implications of terrorism in West Africa. If you like this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and become a part of our community. Here, you'll find historical wars, inspiring stories, and unique content based on real events. If you want to see more engaging and fact-based stories, hit the bell icon to get notified about our latest videos instantly. Your support means the world to us. Leave a comment and let us know what topics you'd like us to cover next. Raising hands fire. Bell subscribe, share, and help us bring these incredible stories to the world.